Vincent Kompany has officially left Burnley, and surprise, surprise to many people, he has left to Bayern Munich of all teams. Now, Reese, we follow the Championship. We did not expect Burnley to lose Vincent Kompany to Bayern Munich, did we?
No, I think Vincent Kompany leaving Burnley is actually quite a surprise in itself. I know you look back at the sort of Premier League stint they had and look, it wasn't good enough and he got things wrong. He made mistakes. Tactically, things weren't how they should be. But that's the benefit of hindsight. If you think back to the Championship season, they were absolutely incredible. And it's always difficult when a big club comes in. But when that club is Bayern Munich, I don't think there's a manager in the land that could easily turn that job down, to be honest. So from a Vincent Kompany point of view, it's one of those jobs where I think you've got to take it because it might not come around again.
And the thing is, and we'll talk about, like the contract in a minute, but I am absolutely baffled by the fact that Bayern Munich even wanted him. Now, I'll talk about the positives in a minute because I can see plenty of positives as well. But Burnley, they got relegated last season. I thought Vincent Kompany, when Burnley got relegated, was incredibly naive in regards to his tactical setup. Why did Bayern Munich want Vincent Kompany, do you reckon?
I think you've almost got to disregard the Premier League season, and I know it's a weird thing to say, but you've got to think back to how incredible they were in the Championship, and then you look at Vincent Kompany as a person, and you look at the boxes that he still does tick. You look at his experience, you look at his leadership, you look at how he can sort of take charge of a dressing room, and that's something that can go under the radar quite easily. I know that the Premier League season, and look, Burnley weren't good enough, and a lot of that falls down on the manager. But were the players actually good enough to play his style of football? I'd argue that they weren't. So perhaps if he plays his philosophy with much improved players, we might see a Vincent Kompany side be successful.
But Burnley did spend a lot of money though, so do you reckon a lot of the responsibility also falls on Vincent Kompany? And do you reckon he's learnt enough from the Premier League to manage an absolutely ginormous team at Bayern Munich?
I think that's one that time's just gonna tell us as it plays out, to be honest. I think, as I said, from a Vincent Kompany point of view, it's a job that you take in a heartbeat, to be honest. But from a Bayern point of view, I don't get the attraction from the Premier League season. I know how good they were in the Championship, but performing in the Championship doesn't normally merit a top 6 in terms of best clubs in the world, which I think Bayern Munich sort of fall into there, to be honest. I mean, how often do you see, and I'll challenge anyone watching this to sort of tell me, how often has a manager been relegated from the Premier League or relegated from any club in any division and managed to pull off a move as massive as Bayern Munich?
And personally, I'm wondering whether it is a shortcut for the Bayern Munich owners, because Vincent Kompany, in hindsight, they are a very rich club. He probably didn't cost them that much at all. So I'm wondering whether it is a shortcut, a bit of a punt for them, just to get in a name who's already been there, done that during his playing career, and are maybe expecting it to translate onto kind of like the pitch as a manager as well. Now let's talk about Bayern Munich as well a minute. They finished third in the Bundesliga last season on 72 points, 18 points behind Bayern Leverkusen. They do have a smattering of world-class players: Harry Kane, Manuel Neuer, Joshua Kimmich. The list can go on and on. Do you reckon Vincent Kompany is the right man to manage these big egos?
I wouldn't necessarily say egos, but I think there's big personalities definitely within that Bayern Munich camp. It's a job and it's a position that I think has come too early as the ultimate sort of thing. Kompany's yet to really sort of find his feet in management. He's yet to get sort of settled down. I know he had other jobs, but nothing to the scale of this. And I think, look, I claim to be no German football expert, but Bayern Munich every season are pushing for the title. That's where their aims and their ambitions should be. So for them to fall back, and I know how good Leverkusen have been when I say this, but for them to finish so far off the top, fans, ownership boards, players, they're going to want to push for the title next season and do it in some style. Do I believe that Vincent Kompany can deliver that purely based on what we've seen so far? I'm going to argue no. I don't think he could. But the players he listed off there's so many more players that we could go through. That squad by itself is good enough to challenge. So I don't think it's going to be a massive job for Kompany to come into and motivate players necessarily. There's a lot of experience there. There's a lot of players who have been there and done it before. But this job it is a strange one, but it is one that Kompany couldn't find out.
So Vincent Kompany, in the press, he talked a lot about mentality, and when asked by the German press about his move to Bayern Munich, he said, "My mentality is that I haven't ever worked for a top club in my head. A top club is the environment you create. It's the mentality you have towards your job in good and bad times. That is what defines working at the top level. It already feels like home." So, look, Vincent Kompany, he was he was captain at Manchester City. Again, will that translate well when he's manager of Bayern Munich?
I don't see how it can. I think when you're playing and when you've got the experience in the dressing room, and then in the other camp, when you're the manager and you're trying to motivate players, they're two totally different ballparks. That's not an easy sort of translation over. And I know you look at Kompany and the boxes in which he sort of ticks, his personality, his characteristics, his leadership, his inspiration. Yes, you can look at all this, but that doesn't make you a good manager. Look at Wayne Rooney. I don't want to keep sort of drawing attention to that situation, but you could say the same things for him. And his managerial career hasn't been great. Okay, he hasn't hit the same heights as the Bayern Munich, of course, yet. But the bottom sort of line is that the expectations and the hope around Bayern Munich is to be challenging in every final, to be winning every title, to be winning every trophy that they compete in, because that's the nature of a club. And that's a lot of pressure for Vincent Kompany to actually come into as well. And when you've got that sort of weight of expectation, that then sort of tells me that the fans and maybe the board aren't in this for a project, but they're going to want sort of instant success or to be instantly challenging. And I don't see the correlation. I don't see the relation. I can't see Kompany delivering on that.
And let's talk about Burnley a minute, because Craig Bellamy will take temporary charge of Burnley following the departure of Vincent Kompany. It's also worth saying that Burnley could potentially lose plenty of big names during the summer. So, according to The Athletic, they could potentially lose the likes of Sander Berg, Wilson Odobert, Luca Kolyosho, James Trafford, and Zeki Amadouni. They could also lose some very important players who are absolutely crucial to them during their last stint in the Championship. These names also include Manuel Benson and Anas Zahoure. So regardless of who the manager is next season at Burnley, Reece, they are going to potentially have a tough time.
Yeah, they are. And the first name, when I read that list out, the first name that actually hit me was James Trafford. And I know Premier League, it was maybe a year too soon for the young goalkeeper. He's got bags of potential there. You look back at the Championship season and the saves he was making, the performances in which he put in. But he's a player who's going to go on to the future. And if you lose two or three of those players, if you lose especially Zahoure, we think back to how good he was in the Championship. Amdouni's another one, absolute standout. If you start to lose these players, then surely Burnley as a club should have done everything in their power to keep Kompany there. Because if you lose 3, 4, 5 of those players and you lose your manager, suddenly you are a different team and you are a different club. And if your sort of weight of expectation from the board and the ownership and then the fans, if the expectation is to bounce back up in the Premier League, which I don't think is a good idea, but if the expectation is there to bounce back up and you're doing it without the likes of these players, I don't see how you can do it. Because a Championship, it's not an easy league by any stretch of the imagination. It gets stronger and stronger every year. And if you're going to lose names as big as Sander Berg as well in midfield, if you're going to lose these players, It's going to be a long, long, tough season.